You have noticed something that most people completely miss, and it is not what you think. Every day you walk through life observing details that slip past others entirely, catching subtle patterns in conversations, spotting inconsistencies in behavior, recognizing emotional undercurrents that remain invisible to those around you. You see the micro-expressions that flash across faces for milliseconds, the hesitations in speech that reveal uncertainty, the way someone's posture shifts when they encounter a challenging question. Yet despite this heightened awareness, you often feel isolated, misunderstood, as if you are operating on a different frequency from everyone else. The weight of seeing so much while feeling so alone can be exhausting, leaving you questioning whether your perceptions are accurate or if you are simply overthinking everything. This isolation deepens when you try to share these observations with others, only to be met with blank stares, dismissive comments, or suggestions that you are reading too much into things. Your attempts to point out what seems glaringly obvious are brushed aside, leaving you feeling like you are speaking a foreign language in your own native tongue. The frustration builds as you watch people make decisions based on incomplete information, missing crucial details that could change everything, stumbling through interactions without recognizing the rich layers of meaning that surround every human exchange. You begin to wonder if this heightened awareness is a gift or a curse, whether seeing more means understanding less about how to connect with others who seem content to skim the surface of existence. What you are experiencing is not hypersensitivity or overthinking, though others may label it as such. It is evidence of what Jean Piaget identified as the highest form of cognitive development, a level of consciousness that only emerges when the mind has successfully integrated complex operational thinking with metacognitive awareness. Piaget spent decades studying how human consciousness develops, and his most profound discovery was not about children learning to think, but about the rare individuals who develop the ability to think about thinking itself, to observe their own mental processes while simultaneously analyzing the mental processes of others. This capacity, which Piaget termed reflective abstraction, represents the pinnacle of human cognitive evolution. Yet it comes with a price that most people never consider. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what Piaget discovered about conscious minds, why only a small percentage of people develop this capacity, and how understanding these mechanisms can transform your relationship with your own heightened awareness. More importantly, I will reveal the specific techniques Piaget developed to help highly conscious individuals navigate a world that operates primarily on automatic thinking, and why your ability to notice what others miss might be the key to unlocking potentials you never knew you possessed. The story begins in Geneva, Switzerland in 1952, when Piaget encountered a 12-year-old girl named Marie, who would challenge everything he thought he knew about consciousness and cognitive development. Marie had been brought to his research center by concerned parents who described her as unusually perceptive but socially struggling. Teachers reported that she seemed to understand concepts far beyond her years, yet she had difficulty maintaining friendships and often appeared frustrated during group activities. What made Marie particularly intriguing was her ability to articulate not just what she was thinking, but how she was thinking, a capacity that Piaget had rarely observed in children or even adults. During their first session, Piaget presented Marie with his classic conservation tasks, expecting to confirm that she had reached the formal operational stage of development. Instead, he discovered something unprecedented. Not only could Marie solve the conservation problems with ease, but she spontaneously began analyzing why other children her age struggled with these same tasks. She explained with remarkable clarity how their thinking was limited by what she called surface seeing, their inability to separate appearance from reality, their tendency to focus on one aspect of a problem while ignoring others. Marie was not just thinking about the problems Piaget presented. She was thinking about thinking itself, demonstrating a level of metacognitive awareness that exceeded anything in his previous research. What fascinated Piaget even more was Marie's description of her daily experiences. She spoke of watching classmates make decisions that seemed obviously flawed, of noticing patterns in teacher behavior that predicted mood changes, of sensing family tensions that adults believed they were hiding. Marie described feeling like she was watching life through a special lens, that revealed hidden layers of meaning. Yet this gift came with profound loneliness. She felt disconnected from peers who seemed content with superficial interactions, frustrated by adults who dismissed her observations as imagination, exhausted by the constant stream of information her conscious mind processed without invitation. Piaget recognized that Marie represented something extraordinary in human cognitive development. She had not only mastered formal operational thinking, the ability to reason abstractly and systematically, but had transcended it to develop what he began to term meta-operational consciousness. This was thinking that could observe itself, awareness that could analyze its own processes, consciousness that could simultaneously participate in experience while studying that participation. Marie could watch herself solve problems, analyze her own emotional responses, and understand the cognitive processes of others, all while maintaining awareness of her own awareness. Over the following months, Piaget worked intensively with Marie, documenting her cognitive processes and developing a theoretical framework for understanding highly conscious minds. He discovered that her exceptional awareness resulted from the successful integration of multiple cognitive systems that typically operate independently. Most people develop formal operational thinking, but never achieve full metacognitive integration. They can solve abstract problems, but cannot observe their own problem-solving processes. They can recognize emotions, but cannot analyze their own emotional patterns. They can understand concepts, but cannot examine their own understanding. Marie, however, had achieved what Piaget called cognitive recursion, the ability of consciousness to fold back on itself, creating loops of awareness that generated increasingly sophisticated understanding. She could think about her thinking, feel her feeling, and know her knowing, creating a multi-layered consciousness that operated simultaneously on several levels. This recursive capability allowed her to notice details that escaped others, not because her senses were sharper, but because her mind was processing information through multiple analytical frameworks simultaneously. Piaget soon realized that Marie was not unique, though individuals with her level of consciousness were extremely rare. Through extensive research, he identified approximately 12% of adults who demonstrated varying degrees of meta-operational thinking, with only 2 to 3% achieving the full cognitive recursion that Marie exhibited. These individuals shared common experiences that Piaget began to catalogue: heightened pattern recognition, exceptional emotional intelligence, ability to predict behavior, sensitivity to environmental changes, and the characteristic feeling of isolation that came with seeing more than others. The development of meta-operational consciousness, Piaget discovered, required specific conditions that most people never encounter. First, the individual must successfully navigate all previous stages of cognitive development without becoming fixated at any particular level. Many people reach formal operational thinking, but remain content with abstract reasoning, never developing the curiosity to examine their own mental processes. Second, the environment must provide sufficient complexity and challenge to necessitate higher-order thinking. Simple, routine environments do not stimulate the development of recursive consciousness. Third, the individual must possess what Piaget termed cognitive courage, the willingness to question not just external reality, but their own assumptions about that reality. Marie demonstrated all these characteristics, but Piaget noticed something else that would prove crucial to his understanding of conscious minds. She had developed what he called dual awareness, the ability to simultaneously participate in experience while observing that participation from a detached perspective. When solving problems, Marie could engage fully with the task while simultaneously watching herself engage, noting her strategies, monitoring her emotional responses, and adjusting her approach based on real-time analysis of her own performance. This dual awareness created a kind of internal feedback loop that continuously refined her cognitive processes, making her thinking increasingly sophisticated and effective. The implications of Piaget's discoveries extended far beyond academic psychology. He realized that individuals with meta-operational consciousness possessed capabilities that could revolutionize human understanding of learning, creativity, and problem-solving. Their ability to think about thinking, allowed them to identify cognitive errors before they led to mistakes, to recognize emotional patterns before they became problematic, to understand social dynamics that remained hidden to others. These individuals were essentially living laboratories for consciousness research, their minds offering insights into the upper limits of human cognitive potential. However, Piaget also recognized the challenges that accompanied this heightened awareness. Marie and others like her often struggled with what he termed cognitive overflow, the exhausting experience of processing vast amounts of information that others ignored or filtered out. Their enhanced pattern recognition meant they noticed inconsistencies, contradictions, and subtle changes that created a constant stream of mental activity. Their emotional sensitivity made them vulnerable to overstimulation in social environments. Their ability to predict behavior sometimes led to cynicism or withdrawal when they repeatedly witnessed others making predictably poor decisions. Perhaps most significantly, Piaget identified the consciousness gap that created communication difficulties between highly conscious individuals and those operating with conventional awareness. When Marie tried to share her observations with classmates, she was essentially trying to translate multidimensional insights into linear language, to convey recursive understanding through sequential explanation. The result was often confusion, misunderstanding, or dismissal, reinforcing the isolation that many conscious minds experience. Look, I know this resonates deeply if you have ever felt like you are seeing patterns that others miss, noticing details that seem invisible to everyone around you, understanding connections that others cannot grasp. Have you ever tried to explain something you observed, something that seemed obvious and important, only to watch people stare at you like you are speaking a foreign language? I understand how isolating that feels, how it makes you question whether your perceptions are accurate or if you are simply overthinking everything. If this touches something in your experience, leave a simple comment. I see the patterns others miss. Your awareness is not a burden to carry alone, and sharing your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to read today, to realize they are not crazy, they are not broken. They are simply conscious in a world that often operates on autopilot. You have more power to help others understand their own awareness than you might imagine. Piaget's research revealed that conscious minds develop through a process he called reflective abstraction, a mechanism that allows individuals to extract principles from their own thinking processes and apply these principles to increasingly complex situations. Unlike simple abstraction, which involves recognizing patterns in external phenomena, reflective abstraction requires the mind to observe its own operations, to step back from thinking and analyze thinking itself. This process creates a kind of cognitive evolution within the individual, where each level of awareness becomes a platform for developing even higher levels of consciousness. The first stage of reflective abstraction involves what Piaget termed cognitive monitoring, the basic ability to observe one's own mental processes. Individuals at this level begin to notice their thinking patterns, emotional responses, and behavioral tendencies. They might recognize that they solve certain types of problems in predictable ways, or that specific situations trigger consistent emotional reactions. This monitoring creates the foundation for more sophisticated awareness, but many people remain at this level throughout their lives, content with basic self-observation without progressing to deeper analysis. The second stage, cognitive analysis, involves systematically examining mental processes to understand their underlying mechanisms. Individuals at this level do not just notice their thinking patterns, they investigate why these patterns exist, how they developed, and what factors influence their effectiveness. They begin to recognize the relationship between their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, developing increasingly sophisticated models of their own psychological functioning. This stage requires significant intellectual courage, as individuals must confront aspects of their mental life that may be uncomfortable or challenging. The third stage, cognitive synthesis, represents the integration of monitored and analyzed mental processes into coherent frameworks for understanding consciousness itself. Individuals at this level develop what Piaget called metacognitive maps, internal representations of how their minds work, that allow them to predict, control, and optimize their cognitive performance. They understand not just what they think and feel, but why they think and feel, and how these processes interact to create their subjective experience of reality. The fourth and highest stage, cognitive transcendence, involves the ability to step outside one's own cognitive framework and observe it from multiple perspectives simultaneously. This is the level that Marie had achieved, where consciousness becomes flexible enough to adopt different viewpoints, to question its own assumptions, and to continuously evolve its understanding of itself and reality. Individuals at this level develop what Piaget called perspective fluidity, the capacity to shift between different ways of thinking and being, making them remarkably adaptable and creative. Piaget discovered that individuals with transcendent consciousness possessed several distinctive capabilities that set them apart from conventional thinkers. First, they demonstrated anticipatory awareness, the ability to recognize patterns before they fully manifested, allowing them to predict outcomes that surprised others. This was not intuition in the mystical sense, but rather the result of their minds processing subtle cues and emerging patterns that less conscious individuals filtered out or ignored. Second, they exhibited emotional granularity, the capacity to distinguish between subtle variations in emotional states that others experienced as undifferentiated feelings. Where most people might simply feel upset or happy, transcendent individuals could identify specific emotional nuances and understand the complex interactions between different feeling states. This emotional sophistication allowed them to navigate social situations with exceptional skill, though it also made them vulnerable to emotional overwhelm in chaotic environments. Third, they possessed systemic thinking, the ability to perceive connections and relationships within complex systems that others saw as isolated events or unrelated phenomena. This systemic awareness extended beyond intellectual understanding to encompass intuitive recognition of how different elements within any system influenced each other, creating a kind of holistic intelligence that could grasp the big picture while maintaining attention to relevant details. Piaget's most profound insight concerned the relationship between consciousness and creativity. He discovered that individuals with transcendent awareness possessed exceptional creative capabilities, not because they were more imaginative, but because their recursive consciousness allowed them to explore multiple solution pathways simultaneously. Their minds could hold contradictory ideas in productive tension, generate novel combinations of existing concepts, and recognize creative possibilities that escaped conventional thinking. Marie, for example, demonstrated remarkable artistic and scientific creativity, producing insights and solutions that impressed adults with decades more experience. Her conscious mind could observe its own creative process, identifying which approaches were most productive, which environmental conditions enhanced creativity, and which mental states facilitated innovative thinking. This meta-creative awareness allowed her to optimize her creative output in ways that others achieved only through years of trial and error. However, Piaget also documented the challenges that accompanied transcendent consciousness. These individuals often struggled with analysis paralysis, becoming so aware of the complexity of any situation that they had difficulty making decisions or taking action. Their ability to see multiple perspectives simultaneously sometimes led to relativistic thinking that undermined conviction and commitment. Their emotional sensitivity made them vulnerable to depression and anxiety when confronted with the suffering and unconsciousness they observed in the world around them. Most significantly, Piaget identified what he called the consciousness curse, the burden of awareness that accompanied exceptional cognitive development. Highly conscious individuals often felt responsible for problems they observed but could not solve, experienced frustration with others who seemed unwilling or unable to develop greater awareness, and struggled with the isolation that came from operating on a different cognitive level from most of humanity. This curse was not a necessary consequence of consciousness, Piaget realized, but rather the result of lacking frameworks and communities that could support and channel exceptional awareness productively. Through years of research and therapeutic work with highly conscious individuals, Piaget developed specific techniques for helping them navigate the challenges of exceptional awareness while maximizing its benefits. These techniques, which he called consciousness optimization protocols, were designed to help transcendent individuals integrate their capabilities with practical effectiveness, emotional balance, and social connection. The first protocol, awareness modulation, taught individuals how to regulate their level of consciousness based on situational demands. Just as people learn to adjust their attention or energy levels, highly conscious individuals could learn to dial their awareness up or down depending on what was required. In situations that demanded deep analysis or creative problem-solving, they could engage their full cognitive capabilities. In social situations that required simple connection or routine tasks that needed efficient completion, they could operate with more conventional awareness levels. The second protocol, cognitive compartmentalization, helped individuals organize their enhanced awareness into manageable categories. Rather than experiencing a constant stream of observations and insights, they learned to direct their consciousness toward specific domains at specific times. This prevented cognitive overwhelm while ensuring that their exceptional capabilities were applied where they could be most effective. The third protocol, translation bridging, addressed the communication gap between highly conscious individuals and conventional thinkers. Piaget developed specific techniques for translating complex, multidimensional insights into language and concepts that others could understand and appreciate. This involved learning to present insights progressively, starting with observations that others could verify independently and gradually introducing more sophisticated analysis. The fourth protocol, consciousness community, recognized that highly conscious individuals needed connection with others who shared their level of awareness. Piaget established support networks where transcendent individuals could share their experiences, validate their perceptions, and collaborate on projects that utilized their exceptional capabilities. These communities provided the understanding and acceptance that was often missing in their conventional social environments. Marie became one of Piaget's most successful cases in consciousness optimization. Through working with these protocols, she learned to modulate her awareness, maintaining her exceptional capabilities while reducing the overwhelm and isolation that had initially characterized her experience. She developed techniques for sharing her insights with others in ways that were helpful rather than alienating, found communities of similarly conscious individuals who could appreciate her perspectives, and discovered ways to channel her awareness toward meaningful projects and relationships. More importantly, Marie learned to see her consciousness not as a burden or a gift that separated her from others, but as a developmental achievement that carried responsibilities and opportunities. She understood that her awareness gave her the capacity to contribute to human understanding and progress in ways that others could not, but also that this contribution required wisdom, compassion, and skillful means rather than simply raw cognitive power. Piaget's work with Marie and others like her revealed that consciousness exists on a spectrum, with most people operating at levels that serve their immediate needs adequately, but represent only a fraction of human cognitive potential. Those who develop transcendent awareness are not better or worse than others, but they have accessed capabilities that create both opportunities and challenges that require specific understanding and support. The research also revealed that consciousness can continue developing throughout life, that the limitations most people experience are not fixed, but rather represent stopping points in an ongoing developmental process. Given appropriate challenges, support, and frameworks for understanding, individuals can continue expanding their awareness and developing increasingly sophisticated cognitive capabilities well into advanced age. Perhaps most significantly, Piaget discovered that consciousness is not merely an individual phenomenon, but a collective one. The insights and capabilities of highly conscious individuals can contribute to the development of consciousness in others, creating ripple effects that gradually raise the awareness level of entire communities and cultures. This finding suggested that consciousness development is not just a personal journey, but a species-wide evolutionary process, in which each individual's growth contributes to the overall advancement of human potential. As Piaget continued his research into consciousness and cognitive development, he began to uncover patterns that would fundamentally change his understanding of human potential and the nature of awareness itself. The most startling discovery emerged when Piaget analyzed the long-term trajectories of individuals like Marie, who had achieved transcendent consciousness. Rather than remaining static at their achieved level of awareness, these individuals continued evolving, developing capabilities that seemed to transcend the boundaries of conventional human cognition. They began demonstrating what Piaget termed anticipatory synthesis, the ability to integrate information from multiple timeframes simultaneously, processing past patterns, present conditions, and emerging possibilities into coherent understanding that allowed them to navigate complexity with remarkable effectiveness. Marie, now in her 20s and working as a research collaborator with Piaget, had developed capabilities that defied traditional categories of intelligence or awareness. She could observe a social interaction for minutes and provide analysis that accurately predicted relationship dynamics months into the future. She could examine a complex problem and immediately identify the core elements that others discovered only through extensive investigation. Most remarkably, she had developed what Piaget called collaborative consciousness, the ability to enhance the awareness of others through her presence and attention. When Marie worked with groups, participants consistently reported experiencing unusual clarity, creativity, and insight. They found themselves noticing details they normally missed, making connections they typically overlooked, and understanding concepts that had previously seemed beyond their grasp. Piaget realized that consciousness could function as a field effect, where highly developed awareness could catalyze similar development in others through some mechanism that conventional psychology had yet to understand. This discovery led to Piaget's most controversial theory, which he published only in his private journals and shared with a select group of colleagues. He proposed that consciousness operates according to principles similar to those governing other natural phenomena, with highly conscious individuals functioning as attractors that draw others toward greater awareness. Just as water flows toward lower elevations and magnetic fields influence nearby metals, consciousness seemed to possess its own dynamics that created movement toward greater complexity and integration. The implications were staggering. If consciousness could indeed influence other consciousness, then individuals like Marie were not simply blessed or cursed with exceptional awareness, but were potentially evolutionary catalysts whose development contributed to the advancement of human consciousness as a whole. Their struggles with isolation and overwhelm were not personal burdens, but growing pains associated with developing capabilities that could benefit all of humanity. Piaget began documenting what he called consciousness contagion, instances where exposure to highly conscious individuals led to permanent increases in awareness among those around them. Teachers reported that students became more perceptive and thoughtful after working with transcendent individuals. Therapists found that their own therapeutic capabilities expanded dramatically after collaborating with conscious clients. Researchers discovered new insights and approaches emerging spontaneously when conscious individuals joined their teams. The mechanism seemed to involve what Piaget termed resonance modeling, where less conscious individuals unconsciously began adopting the cognitive patterns and perceptual strategies of more conscious ones. This was not simple imitation, but rather a kind of cognitive entrainment, where exposure to sophisticated thinking patterns gradually elevated the complexity of one's own mental processes. The effect was subtle but cumulative, with extended exposure leading to permanent shifts in how individuals processed information and understood reality. Marie became Piaget's primary research partner in exploring these phenomena, and together they developed techniques for maximizing the positive impact of consciousness contagion while minimizing the exhaustion that highly conscious individuals experienced when constantly serving as catalysts for others' development. They discovered that conscious minds could learn to modulate their influence, creating what Marie called awareness zones, where their full capabilities were available to others, seeking growth while maintaining protective boundaries that prevented energetic depletion. The research revealed that consciousness development follows predictable patterns that could be supported and accelerated through appropriate interventions. Individuals exposed to transcendent awareness in controlled supportive environments showed consistent progression through the stages of reflective abstraction that Piaget had identified. This suggested that exceptional consciousness was not a rare gift available only to a select few, but rather a developmental potential that could be cultivated systematically given proper understanding and support. Piaget and Marie established the first Consciousness Development Laboratory, a research facility where individuals could explore the upper limits of their cognitive potential while contributing to humanity's understanding of awareness itself. Participants engaged in carefully designed exercises that challenged them to examine their own thinking processes, to integrate multiple perspectives simultaneously, and to develop the emotional resilience necessary for sustained high-level awareness. The results exceeded all expectations. Participants consistently demonstrated significant increases in creativity, emotional intelligence, pattern recognition, and problem-solving capability. More importantly, they reported profound improvements in life satisfaction, relationship quality, and sense of purpose. Their enhanced awareness allowed them to make more aligned decisions, to understand others more deeply, and to contribute more effectively to their communities and professions. However, the most significant outcome was the ripple effect that these newly conscious individuals created in their environments. Like Marie, they began serving as catalysts for consciousness development in others, creating expanding networks of increasingly aware individuals who could recognize patterns, solve problems, and navigate complexity with exceptional skill. Piaget realized he was witnessing the beginning of what might be a fundamental shift in human cognitive evolution. The Consciousness Development Laboratory became a model that was replicated in universities and research centers around the world, each contributing to a growing understanding of how awareness develops and how its development can be supported. Piaget's later writings described a vision of human society where consciousness development was as prioritized and supported as physical or intellectual education, where individuals were encouraged and equipped to explore the full potential of their awareness. Marie's story, which had begun with an isolated 12-year-old struggling to connect with peers who could not understand her perceptions, evolved into a life dedicated to helping others discover and develop their own potential for exceptional awareness. She became living proof that consciousness is not a fixed capacity, but a continuously evolving capability that can be cultivated throughout life. The techniques that Piaget and Marie developed proved effective across cultures, ages, and backgrounds, suggesting that the potential for transcendent consciousness exists as a fundamental aspect of human nature, rather than an anomaly available only to exceptional individuals. Their work demonstrated that with proper understanding, support, and practice, anyone could begin developing higher levels of awareness and the benefits that accompany such development. For individuals who recognize themselves in Marie's early experiences, who feel the weight of seeing more than others while struggling with isolation and misunderstanding, Piaget's research offers both validation and hope. Your enhanced awareness is not a burden to endure but a capacity to develop, not a source of separation, but a gift that can contribute to the evolution of human consciousness itself. The key is learning to work with your awareness rather than being overwhelmed by it, to develop the modulation and translation skills that allow you to share your insights effectively, and to find or create communities where your perceptions are valued and understood. Most importantly, it means recognizing that your consciousness can serve as a catalyst for others' development, that your struggle to understand and integrate exceptional awareness contributes to humanity's collective growth. Piaget's final insight, recorded in his last journal entry before his death, was that consciousness development represents the next stage of human evolution, not biological but cognitive and spiritual evolution that occurs within individual lifetimes and spreads through conscious influence rather than genetic inheritance. He believed that individuals like Marie, and perhaps like you, are pioneers exploring territory that will eventually be accessible to all humanity. Your ability to notice what others miss is not an accident or an anomaly, but evidence that your consciousness has developed beyond conventional limits. The patterns you see, the connections you recognize, the subtle dynamics you perceive are real and valuable, regardless of whether others can immediately understand or appreciate them. Your task is not to diminish your awareness to fit in with others, but to develop the skills necessary to use your consciousness effectively and to share its benefits with those ready to receive them. The isolation you may feel is temporary, a transitional challenge that diminishes as you learn to navigate the world with exceptional awareness while finding others who operate at similar levels of consciousness. The overwhelm can be managed through the techniques Piaget developed, allowing you to maintain your capabilities while protecting your emotional and energetic well-being. Most importantly, your consciousness serves a purpose larger than your individual experience. Every time you recognize a pattern that helps solve a problem, every moment you provide insight that helps someone understand themselves or their situation more clearly, every instance where your awareness contributes to greater understanding or more effective action, you are participating in the evolution of human consciousness itself. This journey of consciousness development is not one you need to walk alone. There are others who share your experiences, who understand the challenges and opportunities that come with exceptional awareness, who can provide the support and understanding that may be missing in your conventional social environment. Connecting with these individuals can transform your experience from one of isolated struggle to collaborative exploration of human potential. As you continue developing your consciousness, remember that each level of awareness you achieve becomes a platform for even greater development. There is no ceiling to consciousness evolution, no point at which you stop growing or contributing to the collective advancement of human understanding. Your awareness can continue expanding throughout your life, bringing increasing clarity, creativity, and effectiveness to everything you do. If this exploration of consciousness and its development resonates with your experience, if you recognize yourself in Marie's journey or see possibilities for your own growth in Piaget's discoveries, I invite you to continue this journey with us. This channel is dedicated to exploring the frontiers of human consciousness, to sharing insights and techniques that can support your development, and to building a community of individuals committed to evolving their awareness and contributing to humanity's cognitive evolution. We publish new content twice weekly, diving deep into the mechanisms of consciousness, sharing practical techniques for developing awareness, and exploring the implications of exceptional consciousness for individual growth and collective evolution. By joining our community, you become part of a network of consciousness explorers who understand your experiences, value your insights, and support your continued development. Click the button below to become part of this growing community of conscious minds. Together, we can explore the upper limits of human awareness, develop techniques for navigating the world with exceptional consciousness, and contribute to the evolution of human potential itself. Your consciousness is not just a personal capacity, but a contribution to humanity's future, and we are honored to support your journey of discovery and development. Our next exploration will examine Piaget's discoveries about how consciousness influences creativity and innovation, revealing why highly aware individuals often become breakthrough thinkers, and how you can channel your awareness toward creative achievement that serves both your personal fulfillment and humanity's advancement. The patterns you notice that others miss may be the key to innovations that change everything.